The grand hall of the Galactic Coalition Naval Yard stretched for miles, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 1,000 stars. Representatives from 47 species had gathered for what should have been a moment of celebration. Earth, the newest member of the Coalition, was presenting its first warship design for fleet integration. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the podium, her crisp uniform bearing the insignia of United Earth Space Forces. Behind her, a holographic projection displayed the UES Defiant in full detail. The ship looked brutal compared to the sleek Coalition vessels. It had thick armor plating, exposed sensor arrays, and what appeared to be dozens of redundant systems clustered across its hull. The laughter started almost immediately. Admiral Krelnax of the Vrexian Empire leaned back in his floating chair, his three eyes gleaming with amusement. "Commander Chen, forgive my confusion, but is this a warship or a salvage hauler? I count at least 12 redundant power couplings. Did your engineers forget how to build efficiently?" Polite chuckles rippled through the assembly. Chen's jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady. "The redundancies are intentional, Admiral. We designed every system to operate independently in case of what?" A Telcorian diplomat interrupted, her translator converting her melodic tones into sharp words. "System failure? Perhaps you should build better systems rather than planning for them to break." More laughter. Chen glanced at Dr. Marcus Webb, her chief engineer, who stood in the shadows behind the podium. He gave her a small nod. "Continue." "Our energy weapons appear primitive as well," another voice called out. "Are those railguns? We abandoned kinetic projectiles 3,000 years ago." Chen pulled up another schematic. "Yes, sir. We use a combination of directed energy weapons and kinetic systems. The railguns can fire tungsten slugs at throwing rocks at relativistic speeds," Krelnax interrupted again, this time his laughter booming across the hall. "How delightfully primitive. Tell me, do you also plan to use chemical explosives? Perhaps wooden clubs?" The assembly erupted in amusement. Even the normally diplomatic Zenthari representative, Ambassador Quell, seemed to be suppressing a smile. Chen felt heat rising in her cheeks, but she pressed on. "Our defensive systems include both energy shields and physical armor. We've incorporated manual override stations throughout the ship, allowing crew members to operate essential functions even if primary systems fail." A tall Arconian engineer stood, his metallic skin glinting. "Manual overrides? You mean your crew must physically operate systems? This is the technology of museum pieces, not modern warships." Chen took a deep breath. "On Earth we have a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Our history has taught us that." "Your history is irrelevant," Krelnax said, waving, a dismissive appendage. "You are part of the Coalition now. We have maintained galactic peace for 10 millennia through superior technology and strategic coordination. Your world has been spacefaring for less than a century. Perhaps you should observe and learn before attempting to contribute designs." The words stung because they were partially true. Earth had joined the Coalition only 5 years ago, stumbling onto the galactic stage when a Zenthari exploration vessel had detected human radio signals. Humanity had been welcomed with polite condescension, given a small seat at the vast table of galactic politics. Chen had commanded Earth's defense forces during the first contact, managing not to start an interstellar war when heavily armed alien ships appeared in Earth orbit. That moment of level-headed crisis management had earned her this assignment, command of humanity's first Coalition-integrated warship. Now that command felt like a poisoned chalice. "If I may continue," Chen said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "The Defiant incorporates lessons learned from centuries of human naval warfare. We've faced threats with limited resources and survived through adaptability and—" "Enough," Krelnax said, standing. His towering form dominated the assembly. "Commander Chen, the Coalition appreciates Earth's enthusiasm. However, this design is unsuitable for integration into our fleet. It is inefficient, overcomplicated, and frankly embarrassing. I recommend Earth withdraw this proposal and spend the next decade studying Coalition engineering standards before trying again." Silence fell over the hall. Chen felt every eye on her. She wanted to argue, to defend the brilliant engineering that Dr. Webb and his team had poured into the Defiant. She wanted to tell them that every redundancy served a purpose, that every primitive system had been chosen deliberately. Instead, she simply said, "Noted, Admiral." Krelnax nodded, satisfied. The Defiant may remain in Coalition space for observation purposes, but it will not be integrated into active fleet operations. This assembly is... A piercing alarm interrupted him. Every holographic display in the hall flickered red. A Zenthari communications officer burst through the main doors, her normally calm demeanor shattered by obvious panic. Emergency. Long-range sensor stations have detected an anomaly at the edge of Sector 7. Multiple contacts emerging from dark space. Energy signatures match historical records of... The officer's voice faltered. Ambassador Quell stood slowly, her face pale. Historical records of what? The Devourers, Ambassador. The Devourers have returned. The hall erupted in chaos. Species that had lived in peace for millennia suddenly remembered ancient nightmares. The Devourers were legends, horror stories, told to young Coalition members. Biomechanical horrors that consumed entire civilizations, that adapted to every weapon, that had nearly destroyed the galaxy 10,000 years ago before mysteriously vanishing. Krelnax's confident demeanor cracked. Impossible. They were extinct. The records confirmed. The records were wrong, Admiral, the communications officer said, her voice shaking. We have confirmation from 3 separate sensor arrays. At least 200 Devourer vessels are heading toward the Helios defensive line. They'll reach Coalition space in 48 hours. Orders flew. Coalition admirals scrambled to their flagships. The assembly dissolved into organized chaos as species representatives rushed to contact their homeworlds. Krelnax paused at the door, turning back to look at Chen. For a moment, something like pity crossed his alien features. Commander Chen, the Coalition fleet will assemble at Helios Line. Your prototype may accompany us, but stay in the rear observation zone. This will be a battle for experienced crews with proven technology. He left before Chen could respond. Dr. Webb approached, his weathered face grim. Captain? Chen stared at the hologram of the Defiant, still rotating slowly on the abandoned podium. The ship looked rough, ungainly, primitive compared to the sleek Coalition vessels that were now preparing to save the galaxy. Prep the crew, Marcus, she said quietly. We're going to war. They told us to observe. I heard them. Chen's eyes hardened. But when has humanity ever been good at following orders? The Helios defensive line was the most fortified position in Coalition space. Massive defense platforms orbited a binary star system, each one bristling with weapons that could destroy planets. Between them, the Coalition's finest warships took position in perfect geometric formations. Aboard the UES Defiant, Commander Chen watched the displays with mixed feelings. The Coalition fleet was magnificent. 300 vessels representing the pinnacle of galactic military technology. Quantum shields that could deflect antimatter. Adaptive AI systems that predicted enemy movements before they happened. Energy, weapons that tore through dimensions. And then there was her ship, relegated to a position 20,000 kilometers behind the main battle line. Close enough to observe, far enough to be safely irrelevant. Status report, Chen ordered, settling into her command chair. Lieutenant Garcia, her tactical officer, looked up from his console. All systems green, Captain. Railguns loaded, conventional missiles armed, point defense online. Dr. Webb reports engineering is running at optimal efficiency. Which means something's about to break, Chen muttered. On human ships, optimal efficiency usually preceded catastrophic failure. It was why they built so many backups. Her first officer, Commander Jackson, approached with a data pad. Captain, I've been reviewing the intelligence reports on the Devourers. This isn't good. Show me. The main screen shifted to display grainy footage from 10,000 years ago. The images were horrifying. Devourer ships looked like nightmares, made real organic hulls covered in technological growths. They moved like living things, adapting their shapes mid-combat. According to Coalition records, the Devourers consume other species, Jackson explained. Not just kill them, consume, They absorbed technology, biology, everything. Each civilization they destroyed made them stronger. How were they stopped last time? They weren't, they just disappeared. Vanished into dark space. The Coalition hoped they'd gone extinct. Chen studied the ancient footage. The Devourer. Ships were fighting Coalition vessels that looked far more advanced than anything Earth had produced. And the Devourers were winning. "Captain," Garcia interrupted, "Admiral Krelnax is broadcasting to all ships." The Vrexian admiral's face appeared on screen, his earlier arrogance replaced by grim determination. "All vessels, prepare for combat. Long-range sensors confirm 237 Devourer vessels approaching at 0.7 light speed. They will arrive in 15 minutes. Chen felt her pulse quicken. This was real, this was happening. "Coalition doctrine is clear," Krelnax continued. "We hold the line. Our quantum shields will protect us while our adaptive targeting systems identify weaknesses. We possess 10,000 years of technological advancement over these creatures. We will not fail." The transmission ended. Around the defiant Coalition ships powered up their shields. Space itself seemed to shimmer as quantum fields activated. It was beautiful and terrifying. "Captain, should we activate our shields?" Garcia asked. "No, keep them on standby. I want to see what happens first." Jackson frowned. "Captain?" "Call it a hunch, Commander." The wait was agonizing. 15 minutes felt like hours. Chen's crew sat at their stations, hands hovering over controls, watching the countdown timer tick toward 0. Then space tore open. The Devourers didn't arrive so much as they erupted into reality. Dark shapes that seemed to drink in starlight, their hulls writhing with alien technology. 237 vessels, each one massive, each one radiating malevolence. The Coalition fleet opened fire immediately. It was the most spectacular display of military power Chen had ever witnessed. Antimatter torpedoes streaked across space, each one carrying enough energy to vaporize a mountain. Directed energy beams that could cut through stars lanced out from Coalition cruisers. Point defense grids created walls of destructive light. The Devourer's ships burned. Dozens of them simply ceased to exist under the opening barrage. "They're doing it," Garcia whispered. "They're actually winning." But Chen's instincts screamed otherwise. Something was wrong. The surviving Devourer ships moved forward, their hulls rippling. As Chen watched, one of them took a direct hit from an antimatter torpedo. The explosion should have destroyed it. Instead, the ship seemed to absorb the blast, its hull restructuring around the impact point. "Oh no," she breathed. The next volley of Coalition fire hit the Devourers and stopped. The quantum shields that had protected Coalition vessels for millennia suddenly meant nothing. Devourer ships pushed through them like they weren't there. "They're adapting," Jackson said, horror in his voice. Just like the record said, they're adapting in real time. The battle turned into a slaughter. Devourer ships moved with impossible speed, their weapons tearing through Coalition shields as if they were paper. Every tactic the Coalition tried, every weapon they used, the Devourers simply learned, adapted, overcame. Chen watched a Coalition dreadnought get torn apart, its quantum shields flickering uselessly as Devourer weapons reached through dimensional barriers to destroy the ship from inside. The beautiful formations of the Coalition fleet dissolved into chaos. "Captain, Admiral Krelnax is broadcasting again." The Vrexian's face filled the screen, but he looked nothing like the confident Admiral from before. His eyes were wide with fear. "All ships, retreat! Fall back! They're too strong! The transmission cut off. On the tactical display, Krelnax's flagship simply vanished, consumed by 3 Devourer vessels that had torn through its shields like they weren't even active. "Captain," Garcia shouted, "we're receiving emergency command codes. You're now the ranking Coalition officer in this sector." Chen stared at the display. The Coalition fleet was dying. Ships that represented millennia of advancement were being systematically destroyed by an enemy that adapted to everything they threw at it. Her comm buzzed. It was Dr. Webb from engineering. "Captain, I assume you're seeing what I'm seeing. The Coalition is getting slaughtered, Marcus, because the Devourers are adapting to their technology, their quantum shields, their AI targeting, They're antimatter. Weapons, everything they use, the Devourers learn to counter. Chen's mind raced. But they've had 10,000 years to forget about Earth technology. Exactly. Captain, they can't adapt to weapons they've never seen. They can't hack systems that don't exist in their database. They can't predict tactics that aren't in coalition. Doctrine. Chen looked at her crew. Young men and women who had volunteered for a mission everyone thought would be nothing but observation duty. They stared back at her, fear and determination mixing in their eyes. Garcia, calculate a combat approach. Best speed. Captain? Jackson turned to her. We can't fight those things. The Coalition had the most advanced fleet in the galaxy, and they got destroyed in minutes. The Coalition fought with advanced technology, Chen said, standing from her chair. We're going to fight with rocks and stubbornness. Captain, those things adapt to advanced weapons. Let's see how they handle primitive ones. She hit the ship-wide comm. All hands, this is the captain. We're going in. I know we're outgunned. I know we're using technology that the galaxy considers obsolete. But right now, obsolete is exactly what we need. The Devourers have never fought humans before. Let's make sure they remember us. Chen out. The Defiant turned, its primitive chemical, thrusters burning bright against the darkness. Behind them, the Coalition fleet continued to die. Ahead of them, the Devourer swarm waited, fresh from their victory. Commander Sarah Chen smiled grimly. All weapons. Prepare to fire. Let's go introduce these things to Earth's particular brand of chaos. The bridge of the UES Defiant was silent except for the hum of systems and the rapid breathing of the crew. On the main display, the Devourer swarm filled space like a spreading infection. Behind them, the last Coalition ships were fleeing or dying. Distance to enemy 200 kilometers and closing, Garcia reported, his voice tight. Commander Jackson leaned close to Chen. Captain, last chance to reconsider. We don't have quantum shields. We don't have adaptive AI. If their weapons touch us, then we die quickly instead of slowly, Chen interrupted. But I don't plan on dying today, Commander. She raised her voice. Dr. Webb, are you ready down there? The engineer's voice crackled over the comm. As ready as we'll ever be, Captain. All redundant systems are online. I've got teams standing by at every manual override station. If the Devourers try to hack us, they're going to have a very confusing time. Good. Garcia, target the nearest Devourer vessel. Load railgun 1 through 6 with tungsten penetrators. Tungsten rounds loaded, Captain. Targeting solution locked. Chen, watch the Devourer ship on screen. It was massive, easily 3 times the size of the Defiant. Its hull rippled with stolen technology from a dozen species. It turned toward them slowly, as if noticing an insect. Fire. The railguns spoke with a sound that rattled the entire ship. 6 tungsten slugs, each weighing several tons, accelerated to a fraction of light speed. There was no energy signature to detect, no exotic particles to analyze, just solid metal moving very, very fast. The slugs hit the Devourer ship dead center. The effect was spectacular. The Devourer's adaptive shields, designed to deflect energy weapons and redirect exotic particles, simply didn't know what to do with solid matter traveling at relativistic speeds. The tungsten punched through the hull like bullets through wet paper. Atmosphere vented from the wounds. The Devourer ship shuddered, its hull trying to adapt to seal the breaches. Target destroyed, Garcia said, disbelief in his voice. Captain, their shields didn't even activate. They couldn't, Chen said grimly. Those shields are designed for energy weapons. Marcus was right. They've never seen kinetic weapons before. The other Devourer ships reacted immediately. Dozens of them turned toward the Defiant, their attention fully focused on this new threat. Energy beams lashed out, searing toward the small Earth vessel. Evasive maneuvers, Chen ordered. The Defiant rolled, its chemical thrusters firing in rapid bursts. The movement was crude compared to Coalition ships' graceful maneuvers, but it was unpredictable. The Devourer weapons used to targeting ships guided by AI flight patterns, missed by meters. Return fire. All railguns. Continuous barrage. The Defiant's guns roared. Tungsten slugs tore through space, each one a primitive weapon that the Devourers Advanced shields couldn't counter. 3 more Devourer ships took critical hits, their hulls rupturing under the kinetic assault, but there were too many of them. Energy beams finally found their mark, slamming into the Defiant's hull. Alarms screamed across the bridge. "Shield at 40%, Garcia shouted. "Hull breach on deck 3. "Seal it. Damage control teams move." Chen gripped her armrests. "Garcia, load missiles, chemical warheads, proximity fuses." "Captain, those are just conventional explosives. Against ships that size, do it." A dozen missiles streaked from the Defiant's launch tubes. They were simple weapons, guided by basic computers and packed with high explosive. The kind of weapons Earth had used in atmosphere for centuries. The Devourer ships didn't even try to evade them. Their point defense systems, designed to intercept exotic coalition weapons, ignored the primitive missiles completely. The explosions rippled across Devourer hulls. The damage was minor, but it was something the creatures had never encountered. Simple heat and expanding gas. No exotic particles to absorb. No energy signatures to redirect. The Devourer swarm hesitated just for a moment, as if they were confused. "They don't understand us," Jackson breathed. "They've consumed dozens of advanced species, but they've never fought someone using basic physics." Chen smiled coldly. "Then let's give them an education." "Garcia, pattern, Delta 7. Captain, that's a suicide run." "Not if they can't predict it. Execute." The Defiant dove straight into the Devourer formation, its trajectory defying all logical combat doctrine. Coalition ships fought in formations, using mathematical precision. The Defiant flew like its pilot was drunk, weaving and rolling randomly. Several Devourer ships tried to grab the Defiant with energy tethers, the same weapons that had torn coalition vessels apart. The beams locked on, began to pull. "Cut main. Power," Chen ordered. Dr. Webb complied instantly. The Defiant's reactor went cold. Every energy signature disappeared. The Devourer tethers, designed to lock onto power sources, suddenly had nothing to hold. They slipped away harmlessly. "Restart on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark." The reactor roared back to life. The Defiant's railguns fired point blank into a Devourer ship's hull, the tungsten slugs tearing completely through the vessel and exiting the other side. "They're trying to hack us," Garcia yelled. "I'm reading intrusion attempts on our navigation system." "Let them," Chen said. On screen, a Devourer ship was extending what looked like technological tentacles, trying to interface with the Defiant's computers. The creature's adaptive systems, which had effortlessly corrupted Coalition AI, pushed into the Earthship's network and encountered complete chaos. Human computer systems weren't designed with elegant logic. They were built through trial and error, patched and repatched, running on code written by thousands of different programmers over decades. The Defiant systems were a maze of redundant backups, isolated subsystems, and manual overrides. The Devourer intrusion hit a firewall, then another, then tried to access the navigation system and found itself in the coffee maker controls. It attempted to override propulsion and ended up accessing the ship's entertainment database. "They're in our movie collection," Garcia said, fighting back hysterical laughter. "The Devourers are trying to hack us through our movie collection." "Disconnect that system and fry it," Chen ordered. "Give them something to think about." The movie database was isolated and overloaded, sending a surge of corrupted data back through the intrusion attempt. The Devourer ship recoiled, its tentacles withdrawing. Hit them while they're confused, all weapons free. The Defiant became a whirlwind of primitive violence. Railguns hammered Devourer hulls. Chemical missiles exploded against alien armor. At one point, Dr. Webb even fired the ship's point defense lasers, not at enemy ships, but at nearby debris, sending it tumbling into Devourer vessels at high speed. "It's working," Jackson shouted. "Captain, we've destroyed 17 Devourer ships," but Chen could see the truth on the tactical display. 17 ships out of 200 wasn't enough. The Devourers were adapting even to primitive weapons. Their hulls were thickening, their movements becoming more unpredictable, and the Defiant was dying. Hull breaches on 5 decks, shield generator offline, Railgun 3 destroyed, casualties in engineering, an explosion rocked the ship. Chen was thrown from her chair, alarms screaming. Report. Direct hit to starboard side. We've lost life support on decks 4 through 6. Reactor power dropping. Chen pulled herself up, tasting blood. On screen, the Devourer swarm was closing, and they'd learned. They were working together now, coordinating their attacks. She opened a comm to engineering. Marcus, how bad is it? Dr. Webb's response was interrupted by explosions and the sound of emergency klaxons. We're holding together with spit and prayers, Captain, but I don't think we can take much more. Chen looked at her crew. Young faces. Brave faces. Scared faces. They'd come out here knowing they might die. They'd fought anyway, using weapons the galaxy considered obsolete, and they'd made a difference. But it wasn't enough. Captain, Garcia said quietly, we still have one option, Protocol Omega. Every head on the bridge turned. Protocol Omega. The weapon system so dangerous that Earth Command had only approved it because they never thought it would actually be used. Chen took a deep breath. Marcus, prep Protocol Omega. There was a long pause on the comm. Then Dr. Webb's voice, steady despite everything. Captain, you know what that means. I know. Do it anyway. Understood. Protocol Omega will be ready. In 5 minutes. Chen looked at her crew one more time. Anyone who wants to evacuate, now's your chance. The pods are prepped and ready. Nobody moved. Captain, Jackson said softly. Permission to stay at my post. Permission granted, Commander. Permission granted to all of you. Chen smiled through her tears. Let's make this count. 3 months earlier, deep beneath Earth's surface, Dr. Marcus Webb had stood before a classified review board. On the screen behind him was a schematic that made the military officers lean forward with interest and concern. Protocol Omega, Webb had explained, is based on a simple principle. Every FTL drive creates a small tear in space-time. Usually these tears close immediately. But what if we prevented that closure? An admiral had frowned. What would happen? The tear would expand, exponentially. Fed by the energy of an overloading reactor, it would create a shockwave through subspace. Any vessel within range would be hit with unfiltered radiation from multiple dimensions at once. Would it work? Webb had hesitated. Theoretically, yes, but we've never tested it at full scale. The power requirements are enormous, and the ship carrying the device. He hadn't needed to finish. Everyone in the room understood. The ship would be destroyed. Now, aboard the dying Defiant, Webb watched that theoretical weapon become terrifyingly real. How long, Marcus? Chen's voice crackled over the damaged comm system. Webb checked his instruments. Around him, his engineering crew worked frantically, routing power through systems that were never designed to handle such loads. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. The smell of burning insulation filled the air. 4 minutes, Captain. Maybe less. The reactor's already unstable. When we trigger the cascade, we'll have maybe 10 seconds before the whole ship goes. Understood. Keep me updated. Webb looked at his team. Young engineers, most of them fresh from academy. They'd volunteered for this mission hoping to prove Earth's worth to the galaxy. Now they were preparing to die for it. Listen up, he called out. Anyone who wants to leave, head to the escape pods now. No judgment. This wasn't what you signed up for. Nobody moved. A young woman named Rodriguez spoke up. Actually, sir, it kind of was. We joined Earth Space Forces to protect people. Can't do that from an escape pod. Webb felt his throat tighten. Then let's make sure we don't waste this. On the bridge, Chen was coordinating the final attack run. The tactical display showed the nightmare they faced. Nearly 200 Devourer ships surrounded them, closing in like a tightening fist. Captain, the surviving coalition ships are hailing us, Garcia reported. They want to know what we're doing. Tell them to fall back to minimum safe distance. 300,000 kilometers. They're asking why. Just tell them. The Defiant accelerated toward the densest concentration of Devourer ships. Its hull was breached in a dozen places. Its shields were gone. Its weapons were nearly depleted. But its reactor was building toward a controlled overload that would tear a hole in reality itself. Commander Jackson pulled up a data pad. Captain, I've been doing the math. If this works, the shockwave will propagate through subspace. Every Devourer ship in range will be hit simultaneously. And if it doesn't work, then we just blow up really big and accomplish nothing. Chen laughed despite everything. Well, at least we'll go out with a bang. The Devourers seemed to sense something was wrong. Their attacks intensified. Energy beams carved chunks from the Defiant's hull. One blast tore through the bridge viewport, explosive decompression sucking 2 crew members into space before emergency bulkheads slammed shut. Hull integrity at 15%, Garcia shouted over the alarms. Captain, we're coming apart. Marcus, how long? 90 seconds, Captain. The reactor containment is failing faster than predicted. We need to trigger now or we lose control of the cascade. Chen looked at her remaining crew. Faces she'd known for years. People she'd laughed with, trained with, fought beside. Jackson, Garcia, young Ensign Kim at Communications, Dr. Webb and his team in engineering. All hands, she said, her voice carrying through the ship's damaged comm system. This is the captain. In 60 seconds, we're going to do something that's never been done before. We're going to make the galaxy remember that humans don't give up. We don't run, and we sure as hell don't let monsters like these win. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I want you all to know, it's been an honor serving with you. If there's an afterlife, save me a seat. Chen out. Her hands trembled as she opened a private channel. Marcus. Here, Captain. Thank you. For everything. For believing in this crazy design. For following me into this suicide run. For... Sarah. Webb interrupted gently, using her first name for maybe the 3rd time in their decade of working together. We both knew what we signed up for. No regrets. No regrets, she echoed. Then, louder, Trigger Protocol Omega. In engineering, Dr. Webb entered the final command sequence. The reactor's containment field didn't just fail, it collapsed in a precisely calculated pattern, one that Webb had spent 3 years developing. The energy release was channeled through the ship's experimental FTL drive, forcing open a tear in spacetime. The Defiant began to scream. It wasn't a sound exactly. It was a vibration that moved through every atom of the ship, through the bones of every crew member. Space itself was protesting what they were doing. Cascade active, Webb reported. Shockwave building, 7 seconds to propagation. On screen, the Devourer ships were pressing their attack, unaware of what was about to happen. They'd adapted to energy weapons, to antimatter, to quantum effects. But this was something completely outside their experience. 6 seconds. Chen gripped her armrests. For Earth. 5 seconds. Jackson closed his eyes. For every world that looks at the stars and hopes. 4 seconds. Garcia's hands flew across his console, making sure every last piece of data was transmitted to the retreating coalition ships. Someone had to know what they'd done. 3 seconds. In engineering, Webb's team held hands, their young faces frightened, but determined. 2 seconds. The Devourers finally seemed to realize something was wrong. They tried to pull back, but it was far too late. 1 second. Captain, it's been... The Defiant's reactor didn't explode in any conventional sense. It ripped open a wound in reality, and through that wound poured energy that existed outside normal space-time. The experimental FTL drive, instead of creating a controlled tear for travel, created an uncontrolled cascade. The shockwave was invisible, but devastating. It moved through subspace faster than light, hitting every Devourer ship within 300,000 kilometers simultaneously. Their adaptive shields tried to compensate, their biomechanical systems tried to evolve, their stolen technology tried to redirect the energy, but they couldn't adapt to something that came from outside their dimension. The shockwave wasn't just energy, it was raw chaos, fundamental forces unleashed without pattern or purpose. The Devourers' greatest strength, their ability to adapt and evolve, became their weakness. Their systems burned themselves out trying to process the impossible. One by one, Devourer ships simply died. Their lights went dark. Their hulls stopped moving. 200 vessels, each one a nightmare that had survived for millennia, reduced to lifeless debris in a matter of seconds. The coalition ships, safely distant, watched in awe and horror. The center of the devastation, where the UES Defiant should have been nothing but scattered atoms, sensors detected an impossible reading. "Sir," a Zenthari sensor operator called to his captain, I'm reading a life sign, multiple life signs." "That's impossible. Nothing could survive that." "Sir, I'm telling you, there's a ship. It's barely holding together, but it's there." Through the dissipating energy storm, the Defiant drifted. Its hull was more whole than ship. Its reactor was cold and dead. Its weapons were destroyed. Every system showed red on the damage board, but deep in the heart of the engineering section, protected by layers of redundant shielding that everyone had mocked as primitive and wasteful, Dr. Marcus Webb opened his eyes. "Sound off," he croaked into his comm. Voices came back, weak but alive. Rodriguez, Chen, Jackson, Garcia. Nearly 70% of the crew had survived in pockets throughout the ship, protected by the same redundant systems that the galaxy had laughed at. On the bridge, Commander Sarah Chen pulled herself from the wreckage of her command chair. Her arm was broken, her uniform was torn and bloody, but she was alive. And through the cracked viewport, she could see the drifting hulks of 200 Devourer ships, silent and defeated. "Marcus," she whispered, Did we win?" "I think we just saved the galaxy, Captain, with rocks and stubbornness." Despite everything, the pain, the damage, the impossibility of their survival, Chen started to laugh. The medical bay of the Coalition hospital ship was filled with the injured crew of the Defiant. Commander Sarah Chen sat on a bed while a Zenthari doctor wrapped her broken arm in advanced healing gel. Around her, her crew received treatment for injuries that ranged from minor cuts to severe radiation exposure. They were alive. Against all odds, against all logic, they had survived. "Hold still, Commander," the doctor said, her tone a mix of professional concern and barely concealed. Your bones are knitting well, but you need to rest. What you did out there, the strain on your body from the dimensional cascade. How long until I can return to duty?" The doctor's eyes widened. "Commander, your ship is destroyed. There is no duty to return to." Chen smiled grimly. "There's always duty, Doctor." Dr. Marcus Webb entered the medical bay, limping slightly but grinning. His engineering team followed, most of them bandaged but mobile. "Captain, you need to see this." He pulled up a holographic display. It showed the battlefield, or what remained of it. 200 Devourer ships floated as dead hulks among the debris. Not a single one had survived the cascade. "The Coalition science teams are going crazy," Webb explained. "They've never seen anything like it. Our primitive reactor, channeled through our experimental FTL drive, created a shockwave that propagated through dimensions the Devourers couldn't even perceive. Their adaptive systems burned themselves out trying to evolve to something they couldn't understand." Commander Jackson appeared in the doorway, his head bandaged. "Captain, you're not going to believe who's here." Before Chen could respond, Admiral Krelnax entered the medical bay. The proud Vrexian who had mocked Earth's technology, who had dismissed the Defiant as a museum piece, stood in the doorway looking utterly humbled. The room fell silent. Chen's crew tensed, remembering the contempt in the Admiral's voice during the presentation. Krelnax approached Chen's bed slowly. Then, in a movement that shocked everyone present, the towering alien bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect in Vrexian culture. "Commander Chen," he said quietly, "I was wrong. I was arrogant, dismissive, and blind. Your people saved us all. You fought with weapons we considered obsolete and achieved what our most advanced fleet could not." Chen met his gaze steadily. "Admiral, with respect, our weapons aren't obsolete. They're just different. You spent 10,000 years advancing in one direction. We spent our entire history learning to survive with whatever we had." Krelnax straightened. "You are correct, and that is a lesson the Coalition needs to learn." He gestured to the doorway. "If you are able, the Coalition Council is convening. They wish to speak with you." An hour later, Chen stood before the full Coalition assembly, This time there was no laughter, no condescension. The representatives of 47 species looked at her with respect, fear, and intense curiosity. Ambassador Quell of the Zenthari spoke first. Commander Chen, on behalf of the Coalition, I offer our deepest gratitude. The Devourers would have consumed us all. Your actions saved countless billions of lives. Thank you, Ambassador. But I didn't act alone. My entire crew will be honored. Quell interrupted gently. Every member of the Defiance crew will receive the Star of Valor, the Coalition's highest military decoration, but we must discuss what comes next. A holographic display showed the Defiant, or what remained of it. The ship was barely recognizable. Its hull was breached in so many places it looked like lace. Every system was destroyed or damaged beyond repair. The Defiant will be transported to Earth orbit, a Coalition engineer explained. It is too damaged to repair, but it will serve as a monument to your species' courage and ingenuity. Chen felt a lump in her throat. Her ship. Her beautiful, primitive, ridiculous ship that the galaxy had mocked. It had saved them all. However, the engineer continued, we have a proposal. The Coalition wishes to commission a new generation of warships combining our technology with human design principles. We are calling them Unity-class vessels. New schematics appeared, ships that blended Coalition elegance with human redundancy. Quantum shields backed up by physical armor. AI systems with manual overrides. Energy weapons supplemented by kinetic guns. You see, Krelnak said, standing to address the assembly, we had become complacent. We believed our technology made us invincible. The Devourers proved us wrong. But humanity, with their primitive weapons and redundant systems, showed us that survival isn't about having the best technology. It's about being adaptable. The assembly murmured in agreement. Chen watched species that had existed for millennia, nodding at lessons learned from a civilization barely a century into space travel. Commander Chen, Quell continued, Earth is being offered full voting membership in the Coalition Council, effective immediately. Furthermore, we would like to establish a military exchange program. Coalition officers will train with human forces to learn your tactical doctrine, and we hope you will accept a position as Coalition Fleet Tactical Advisor. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I accept, on one condition. Name it. Respect goes both ways. We have things to learn from you, and you have things to learn from us. No more dismissing ideas because they seem primitive. No more arrogance. We're stronger together than apart. Krelnax stepped forward. Agreed, Admiral. I'm a commander. Chen started. Not anymore, Quell said with a smile. Your promotion is effective immediately, Admiral Chen, along with several other members of your crew. 6 months later, Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of Earth's new embassy station. Through the transparent walls, she could see dozens of ships moving through space. Coalition vessels with their sleek designs, human ships with their blocky, practical construction, and the new Unity-class cruisers, blending both philosophies into something greater. In the distance, Earth hung like a blue jewel. And just above it, preserved in a special orbit, was the Defiant. Lights had been installed to illuminate the battle-scarred hull, making it visible from the planet's surface. Already, it had become a pilgrimage site for humans and aliens alike. Admiral Chen? She turned to find a young Vrexian officer standing nervously at attention. He wore the uniform of the Coalition Space Forces with a small Earth flag patch on his shoulder. Yes, Lieutenant? I'm assigned to the Unity, ma'am. The new hybrid cruiser. He hesitated. I was there at the Helios line. I saw what you did. I watched my people die because we were too proud to see our own weaknesses. Lieutenant, please, ma'am, I need to learn. I need to understand how you think, how you fight, how you survived when we couldn't. Will you teach me? Chen studied the young officer. She remembered Krelnax's dismissive laughter, the mockery of human technology. She could see the fear of inadequacy in this young Vrexian's eyes, the desperate need to prove he could be better. She smiled. Lesson 1, Lieutenant. Never underestimate someone who learned to survive with nothing but stubbornness and duct tape. Duct tape, ma'am. It's a human thing. You'll learn. Come on, I'll introduce you to Dr. Webb. He loves explaining why our so-called primitive systems work better than they should. As they walked through the station, Chen passed windows, showing the galaxy beyond. The coalition was changing. Human engineers worked alongside Xanthari scientists. Vrexian admirals studied human naval history. Species that had existed separately for millennia were finally learning to combine their strengths. And orbiting above, Earth, the battered hulk of the Defiant, caught the light of the sun, its scarred hull reflecting humanity's message to the galaxy. We came from a hard world. We built with what we had, and we never, ever gave up. In the Coalition military archives, the Battle of Helios Line had already been extensively documented. Future officers would study it for generations, learning how a single, outdated ship with primitive weapons had achieved what the galaxy's finest fleet could not. But Chen knew the real lesson wouldn't be found in tactical analysis or weapon specifications. It would be an understanding that different wasn't the same as inferior, that sometimes the old ways worked precisely because they were simple. That survival wasn't about having the best technology, it was about the determination to use whatever you had to protect what mattered. Earth hadn't conquered the stars with superior technology. They'd convinced the stars they belonged there through sheer stubborn refusal to quit. And now, as Chen looked out at the ships moving through space, coalition vessels flying alongside human cruisers, working together, learning from each other, she knew that humanity had given the galaxy something more valuable than advanced weapons. They'd given them hope. Hope that even when you face impossible odds, even when your technology fails, even when everyone tells you that you can't win, you fight anyway. You adapt, you survive, you protect the people beside you, you make it through with rocks, stubbornness, and maybe a little duct tape. The comm chimed. Admiral Chen, the Unity is ready for its shakedown cruise. Captain requests your presence on the bridge. Chen smiled. Tell them I'm on my way. She took one last look at the Defiant, that beautiful, primitive, impossible ship that had saved the galaxy. Then she turned toward the docking bay, toward the new generation of vessels that represented the best of both human and coalition engineering. The future was waiting, and humanity was ready. After all, they'd made it this far on nothing but stubbornness. Imagine what they could do with actual support. The galaxy was about to find out.